My brother accidentally smashed my $9,500 motorcycle with a sledgehammer because I refused to cover his $21,000 debt. Should have helped me, he said. Dad shrugged. You pushed him too far. I didn't argue. That evening I canceled the rent support I had been paying for him and removed my name from his lease. But the real shock came the next morning. The first swing hit the fuel tank, and the sound was not a crash, but a note. A deep metallic ring that traveled across the driveway and across the street and into the open window of my kitchen, where I was standing with a glass of water in my hand and the phone call from my brother still vibrating in my chest. Boyd Wynn was standing in my driveway with a sledgehammer, not a regular hammer, not a bat, a 10-pound sledgehammer with a fiberglass handle that he had taken from the tool set he kept in our father's garage, the garage I paid for, and he was swinging it into the fuel tank of my 2019 Triumph Bonneville T120, with the posture of a man who had practiced the motion before he arrived. Feet shoulder-width apart, hands spaced on the handle. Follow through aimed at the center of the tank where the paint was deepest and the metal was thinnest and the damage would be loudest. 3 swings to the tank. The first dented it. The second cracked the paint in a spider pattern across the matte black finish. The third punctured it, and fuel began to drip onto the concrete in a thin line that caught the afternoon light like a wound that does not know it is bleeding. 2 swings to the front forks. The chrome bent at the triple clamp. The headlight housing cracked, and the lens fell onto the driveway and did not break, which meant the lens was stronger than the frame it was mounted to. And the frame was stronger than the relationship that had brought the sledgehammer to this driveway. 1 swing to each mirror. The left mirror shattered on impact. The right mirror folded inward and hung from a single bolt, reflecting the sky at an angle that made the clouds look like they were falling. 7 swings. 22 seconds. I counted from the kitchen window the way a person counts when they are watching something they cannot stop, and the counting is the only form of control available. 7 swings in 22 seconds is 1 swing every 3.1 seconds, which is the cadence of a man who has practiced the motion and timed the intervals and decided in advance how many it would take. 7 is not a random number. 7 is a plan. $9,500 in damage to a motorcycle I had saved for 3 years to buy. A motorcycle I rode to work every morning along the Platte River Trail because the 26-minute ride was the only part of my day that belonged entirely to me. A motorcycle whose key was in my pocket right now on a leather tag I had stamped with the words "built not bought" because I had not financed it, had not borrowed for it, had not asked anyone for $1 toward it. I had built the savings the way I had built everything in my adult life, 1 deposit at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 no at a time to the things I wanted, so I could say yes to the one thing I needed. I had earned the purchase, and my brother had just destroyed it with a tool he stored in a garage I paid for. Boyd set the sledgehammer on the concrete. He looked at the motorcycle the way a man looks at something he has finished, not angry, not out of breath. Finished, and for half a second before the first swing, a detail I caught from the kitchen window and that Duff's camera would confirm later, Boyd had smiled. A small, closed-mouth smile. The smile of a man who is about to do something he has been planning and is pleased that the moment has arrived. He had come to my house, taken 7 swings, and stopped when the bike was no longer a bike, and the stopping was the part that told me this was not rage. Rage does not count its swings. Rage does not smile before the first one. Boyd had counted. Boyd had smiled. Boyd had planned this. Across the street, Duff was on his porch. 58 years old, retired electrician. The kind of neighbor who waters his lawn at the same time every morning and notices when the rhythm of the street changes. He was holding a coffee mug and his phone was on the railing, and his porch camera, the Ring doorbell he had installed last spring after a package theft, was recording. He watched all 7 swings without moving. He did not call the police. He did not shout. He stood on his porch and watched a man destroy a motorcycle with the focused attention of someone who has worked with tools his entire life and knows the difference between a man using a tool out of frustration and a man using a tool with intent. He told me later, standing in my driveway with the fuel still wet on the concrete, "I watched the whole thing, Regan. He was not angry. He was methodical. 3 swings to the tank, 2 to the forks, 1 to each mirror. That is not a man losing control. That is a man following a plan. And the worst part, he set the hammer down gently, like he was putting away a wrench. Boyd looked at me through the kitchen window. He did not wave. He did not shout. He said one sentence, loud enough to carry across the driveway and through the glass, spoken with the flat certainty of a man who believes he has just completed a transaction. Should have helped me. Then, my father's truck pulled into the curb. Clint Wynne got out and looked at the motorcycle and looked at the sledgehammer and looked at his son and did not flinch. He walked up the driveway with his hands in his jacket pockets, the walk of a man arriving at a scene he expected to find, not a scene that surprised him. He looked at the fuel dripping from the punctured tank and said to me through the open window, "You pushed him too far, Regan. He asked you for help, and you said no. This is what happens when you hoard your money and let your brother drown. This is what happens." Hoard, the word my father used for saving. The word he used for the 3 years I put $200 a month into a dedicated account for the Bonneville, the same years I was also paying $850 a month into Boyd's rent, and $225 a month into Clint's garage, and for the last 14 months, $380 a month into Boyd's debt. In those years, I had spent $27,720 on my brother and my father, and $7,200 on myself, and the $7,200 was hoarding, and the $27,720 was invisible, and the motorcycle was the physical proof that a woman had once spent money on herself, and the proof was now leaking fuel on the driveway of the woman who had earned it. I did not argue. I did not yell. I did not walk outside. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the motorcycle and the fuel on the concrete and the sledgehammer on the ground, and my brother standing next to the wreckage of something I had built with 3 years of saved paychecks, and I picked up the motorcycle key from the counter. Brass leather tag. Built not bought. The key to a machine that no longer existed. The key that was now the heaviest thing in my hand because it opened nothing and meant everything. I put the key in my pocket. Boyd and Clint drove away in Clint's truck. The sledgehammer went with them. The motorcycle stayed in the driveway, leaking fuel onto concrete that I had sealed last summer, and Duff's porch camera recorded their departure the same way it had recorded their arrival, completely, silently, and with a timestamp that would matter later. Welcome to Karma Unfolded, where the person who does not argue is the person who has already decided what to do. If your family has ever destroyed something you built and called it your fault, subscribe now. Because tonight I am making 3 phone calls, and by morning my brother will learn exactly how much of his life was running on my name. My name is Regan Wynne. I am 33 years old. I am a supply chain coordinator for Front Range Logistics in Denver, Colorado. I manage vendor relationships, shipping schedules, and partner contracts for a company that moves $14 million in freight annually. My salary is $84,000 a year, which my family calls office work, as if the office were a waiting room and the work were waiting. Boyd is 29. He works in a warehouse for Harmon Distribution, a partner company that receives 40% of its inbound freight through Front Range Logistics. Boyd got the job because I referred him. I emailed my logistics director, who emailed Harmon's operations manager, who interviewed Boyd as a professional courtesy to the coordinator whose freight kept their loading dock busy 5 days a week. Boyd has worked there for 2 years. His hourly rate is $19.50. His monthly gross is $3,200. He has never connected his employment to my referral because Boyd does not connect things. Boyd receives. Boyd does not trace the wiring. Boyd owes $21,000. The debt is a combination of a defaulted car loan, 2 maxed credit cards, and a personal loan from a credit union that he took out to cover the credit card minimums, which is the financial equivalent of using a fire extinguisher to put out a fire and then setting the extinguisher on fire. 3 days ago, Boyd called me and asked me to pay the $21,000, not help with it, pay it. He said, "You make $84,000 a year. I make 38. You can cover this." I said no. He said, "Then you are choosing your money over your brother." I said, "I am choosing my money over your debt. Those are different things." He hung up. 72 hours later, he was in my driveway with a sledgehammer. What Boyd does not know is how much of his life I already fund. His apartment on Colfax Avenue, rent is $2,100 a month. Boyd's income qualifies him for $1,050. I co-sign the lease, and I pay $850 a month directly to the management company as a guarantor supplement. 20 months of payments. $17,000. Boyd thinks the rent is $250 because that is the number Clint told him when Clint negotiated the lease, which means Clint lied about the rent so Boyd would not know his sister was covering the difference. The $21,000 debt, 14 months ago, Boyd's accounts were sent to collections. His credit score dropped to 490. He could not finance a parking meter. I called the credit union, set up a payment plan, and put my card on the monthly minimums. $380 a month. 14 months. $5,320 in payments Boyd did not make, from an account Boyd does not know about. Managed by the sister Boyd just punished with a sledgehammer. Clint's garage bay, $225 a month. The bay where Boyd stores his tools, his spare tires, his weight bench, and the sledgehammer he used today. The bay is in Clint's apartment complex. The rental is in my name. The payment is from my account. Boyd's tools are stored in a space that exists because I write a check every month, and Clint never mentions it. Total, $17,000 in rent over 20 months, $5,320 in debt payments over 14 months, $5,400 in garage fees over 24 months, $27,700 in active support for a man who took a sledgehammer to my motorcycle because I would not add $21,000 to the pile, $27,720. More than 3 times the value of the motorcycle Boyd destroyed. The irony was not lost on me and would not be lost on Boyd, but it would take 3 phone calls in one morning for the irony to arrive, and when it would arrive with a landlord and a collections agent and an HR representative, and the irony would not be funny. My family has never asked me how I afford the things I provide. My mother died when I was 22 and Boyd was 18, and the dying reorganized the family into a structure where Clint was the figurehead, Boyd was the project, and Regan was the budget. Nobody voted on this structure. Nobody discussed it. It simply appeared. The way structures appear in families where one person starts paying and nobody tells them to stop, and the paying becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an identity, and the identity becomes so automatic that when the person says no for the first time in 11 years, the family does not hear a boundary. They hear a malfunction. And malfunctions get fixed with sledgehammers. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the motorcycle key and my laptop and the window open so I could smell the fuel drying on the driveway. The smell was sharp and chemical and wrong, the way gasoline smells when it is not inside an engine doing its job, but on concrete doing nothing, leaking from a tank that a brother broke because a sister said no. The key was on the table next to the laptop. Brass, leather tag, built not bought. 3 words I had stamped into the leather with a letter punch kit the day I brought the Bonneville home, 3 years ago, because the bike represented 3 years of savings, and the savings represented 3 years of saying no to things I wanted, so I could say yes to one thing I needed. The bike was the first thing in my adult life that I purchased without anyone else's name on the receipt, and now it was a pile of dented metal in my driveway, and the receipt was in my filing cabinet, and the gap between the two was 7 swings of a sledgehammer. I made 3 phone calls. Each one took less time than a single swing of the hammer. The first call was to the apartment management company. I requested removal of my name as guarantor and co-signer on Boyd Wynn's lease at the Colfax Avenue property. The manager pulled up the account. She confirmed what I already knew. Without the guarantor supplement of $850 per month, the tenant's independent income did not meet the qualification threshold of 3 times monthly rent. $2,100 times 3 equals $6,300 required. Boyd's gross income, $3,200. The math did not work without my name, and the math had never worked without my name, and the only reason Boyd had lived on Colfax for 20 months was that his sister's credit score and his sister's bank account had been doing the math for him since the day he signed the lease in a pen that should have been mine. The management company would notify the tenant within 24 hours. 60 days to find a qualifying guarantor or vacate. The second call was to my credit union. I canceled the auto pay on Boyd's debt payment plan. The representative confirmed the next scheduled payment of $380 would not process. The remaining balance of $15,680 would be flagged as delinquent within 30 days. After that, Meridian Collections. Boyd's credit score, which had been slowly climbing from 490 to 540 under the payment plan's discipline, would drop back below 500. 14 months of repair, erased, 14 months of $380 payments from my card, returned to 0. The payment plan I had built for Boyd was the financial equivalent of the motorcycle he had destroyed for me, something constructed over time, maintained with discipline, and demolished by a person who did not understand what it cost to build. The third call was to the Denver Police Department non-emergency line. I filed a report for criminal destruction of property. I described the motorcycle, 2019 Triumph Bonneville T120, matte black, purchased for $9,500, current replacement value approximately $12,400 due to model appreciation. I described the damage: 7 deliberate strikes with a 10-pound sledgehammer, punctured fuel tank, bent front forks, shattered left mirror, cracked headlight, bent right mirror. I described the witness, Duff, neighbor, porch camera footage available showing the suspect's face, the weapon, and the approach. I described the suspect, Boyd Wynn, 29, brother of the property owner, who had stated should have helped me after the destruction. The officer assigned a case number. A detective would follow up within 5 business days. I almost stopped after the 3 calls. The lease was voided. The debt payments were dead. The police report was filed. 3 calls in 40 minutes, each one shorter than the time it took Boyd to swing the sledgehammer 7 times. But the $225 stopped me. The garage bay. The bay where Boyd kept the sledgehammer, the weight bench, the spare tires, the socket set, and whatever else he accumulated in a storage space that existed because I paid for it and Clint lied about it. The tool that destroyed my motorcycle was stored in a room that my money rented, and that circle needed to close. I logged into the garage rental portal and submitted a cancellation notice effective end of month. Boyd's belongings would need a new address in 30 days, and the address would need to be one that did not have my name on the invoice. Welcome back to Karma Unfolded. If you are the person who funds the rent and pays the debt and stores the tools and gets the sledgehammer as a thank you, hit subscribe. Because the morning is coming, and the morning has 3 phone calls waiting for a man who does not know how many of his walls were built by the sister he just broke. I almost called Boyd that night. The number was in my phone, and the accusation was loaded, and the fuel smell was still coming through the window, and every sentence I had was aimed and ready. But the key stopped me. Brass leather tag. Built, not bought. The key reminded me that I had built the savings for the motorcycle the same way I had built the support structure for Boyd's life, quietly, consistently, without asking for recognition. The motorcycle was destroyed, the support structure was about to be, and the woman holding the key did not need to call her brother to explain what was coming. Because what was coming would explain itself at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Thursday. Boyd's phone rang. The landlord. Boyd was eating cereal in the kitchen of the apartment he thought cost $1,250 a month. The call lasted 4 minutes. The manager's voice was professional and final, the voice of a person reading from a document that has already been signed. The guarantor on the lease had withdrawn effective immediately. The tenant's independent income did not meet the qualification threshold. Required 3 times monthly rent, which was $6,300. Boyd's gross income, $3,200. The management company was giving him 60 days to provide a new qualifying guarantor or vacate the premises. The manager used the word vacate twice, and the second time it sounded less like a word and more like a door closing. Boyd set his cereal on the counter. The spoon stayed in the bowl. He looked around the apartment, the 2-bedroom on Colfax that he had lived in for 20 months, the apartment with the south-facing windows and the walk-in closet and the parking spot that came with the lease. And for the first time since he signed the rental agreement, he understood that the lease had a second name on it, and the second name had been paying $850 a month, and the second name was the woman whose motorcycle was leaking fuel in a driveway 4 miles away. 7:35 a.m. Boyd's phone rang again. The credit union, automated message first, then a representative. The monthly payment plan on his consolidated debt account, which had been processing on the 15th of every month for 14 months, had been canceled by the authorized payer. No payment was scheduled for this month. The remaining balance of $15,680 was classified as delinquent, if no payment was received within 30 days. The account would be referred to Meridian Collections for recovery action. The representative asked if Boyd would like to set up a new payment method. Boyd asked how much the monthly minimum would be on his own. The representative said $415 at his current credit rating. Boyd's take-home after rent was $450. The payment would leave him $35 for the month, for food, for gas, for everything. Boyd had been receiving statements for 14 months showing payments of $380 being made on time. He had assumed the payments were automatic from his own checking account. He had never looked at the transaction source because Boyd does not look at sources. Boyd accepts the current. He does not trace it upstream. And the upstream was Regan's visa, which had been quietly feeding $380 into his debt every month while he ate cereal in an apartment she co-signed and drove a truck to a job she referred and stored tools in a garage she rented, and the upstream had dried up overnight because the woman who built the channel had decided to let the riverbed show. 8:10 a.m. Boyd's phone rang a third time. Harmon Distribution HR. The voice was male, clipped, professional. Boyd was asked to report for a referral review meeting at 10 a.m. Friday. He did not know what a referral review meeting was because Harmon had never held one. The meeting existed because at 6:45 a.m. I had emailed my logistics director at Front Range and informed her that the professional referral I had provided for Boyd Wynn 2 years ago was being formally withdrawn due to a criminal property destruction incident involving the referring employee. My director forwarded the email to Harmon's operations manager within 20 minutes. The operations manager forwarded it to HR. HR called Boyd at 8:10. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Boyd's employment was not terminated. It was under review, which in warehouse operations means the same thing as terminated, except with a 48-hour delay and a signature on a form that says separated by mutual agreement instead of fired because his sister stopped protecting him. 3 calls. 90 minutes. The man who had swung 7 times in 22 seconds was now receiving the consequences at a pace that made the sledgehammer look fast. Boyd did not call. Boyd drove. His truck pulled into my driveway at 9:15 a.m., the same driveway where the motorcycle had been standing 20 hours ago, the same concrete where the fuel had dried into a stain that looked like a shadow with no object casting it. He got out of the truck with his phone in his hand and 3 missed calls on his face, and the expression of a man who has spent 90 minutes learning that the ground he was standing on belonged to someone else. Clint was in the passenger seat. He got out slower, the way fathers get out of trucks when they know the conversation on the other side of the door is not one they can redirect. He had driven Boyd here because Boyd's hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel, which was a detail I noticed from the kitchen window and filed next to the 7 steady swings Boyd had taken yesterday. Because a man whose hands shake today and were steady yesterday is a man who has discovered the difference between destroying things and losing them. I walked outside. I stood on the driveway next to the fuel stain. Duff was on his porch across the street with his morning coffee. His phone was on the railing. The porch camera was recording. "What did you do?" Boyd's voice was higher than yesterday. The sledgehammer voice was gone. The morning call's voice had replaced it. The landlord called. The credit union called. My job called. Regan. Harmon called me into a meeting. "What did you do?" "I removed my name from your lease. I canceled the payment plan on your debt, and I withdrew the referral that got you the job." "You cannot do that. That is my apartment. That is my job. You cannot just take them. The apartment is on a lease I co-signed. The rent you think is $1,250 is actually $2,100, and I have been paying $850 a month directly to the management company for 20 months. $17,000, Boyd. Your apartment exists because my name is on the paperwork and my money is in the account." Boyd's mouth opened. He looked at Clint. Clint looked at the fuel stain on the concrete. "The payments on your debt have been coming from my credit card for 14 months. $380 a month. $5,320. You thought the payments were automatic from your account. They were automatic from mine. The credit union set up the plan because I called them. Not you. Me, I did not know that. You did not know because you never checked. You never checked the lease. You never checked the payment source. You never checked who referred you to Harmon. You received and you spent and you swung and you never once looked at the wiring that kept everything running, because looking would have meant seeing your sister's name on every wire, and seeing my name would have meant saying thank you. And thank you is a word this family does not use for the daughter who pays. Boyd's jaw worked. I asked you for help with the debt. $21,000. You make $84,000 a year. You could have covered it. I have been covering it, Boyd, for 14 months. $380 a month. $5,320 of your debt was already paid by me. From my card. The same card I used to buy the motorcycle you just destroyed. So when you asked me to pay $21,000, you were asking me to pay $21,000 on top of the $5,000 I had already paid, and the $17,000 in rent, and the $5,000 in garage fees. You were asking me to add $21,000 to a tab that was already at $27,000. And when I said no, you drove to my house with a sledgehammer. I did not know you were paying all that. That is the problem. You did not know because you did not look. And you did not look because this family taught you that looking is not your job. Your job is to need. My job is to provide. And Dad's job is to tell me I pushed you too far when the providing stops. Clint stepped forward. Regan, this has gone far enough. He made a mistake. You do not destroy a man's livelihood over a motorcycle. He destroyed my motorcycle over a debt, Dad, a debt he created, with credit cards he maxed, on a car loan he defaulted on, from a personal loan he took to cover the cards he already could not pay, and when I would not add 21,000 more to the pile. He took a sledgehammer from a garage I pay for and drove to my house and swung it 7 times. That is not a mistake. That is a choice, and choices have invoices. He is your brother. Family does not file police reports on family. Family does not swing sledgehammers at family either. But here we are, standing on the fuel stain. I turn to Boyd. And the job. You work at Harmon Distribution because I emailed my logistics director 2 years ago and asked her to set up an interview as a professional courtesy. My company sends Harmon 40% of their inbound freight. I am the reason they said yes. And yesterday you destroyed $9,500 of my property with a sledgehammer, so this morning I informed my director that the referral is withdrawn. Your employment is under review. And the review will find that your attendance record has 3 no-call no-shows in the last 6 months, which Harmon tolerated because the referring employee's freight account was worth more than your absenteeism. The freight account is still there. The referral is not. Boyd's face flinched. He had not known about the referral. The way he had not known about the rent. The way he had not known about the debt payments, the way he had not known about the garage. Every wall in his life had my name stamped on the back of it, and he had never turned a single wall around to check. You stood in this driveway yesterday and said, "Should have helped me." Let me tell you what helping you cost me. $17,000 in rent supplements you did not know about. $5,320 in debt payments you did not make. $5,400 in garage bay rentals where you stored the tool you used to destroy my property. That is $27,720 I have spent keeping your life together, Boyd. And you swung a sledgehammer at the one thing I spent my own money on for myself. I looked at Clint. And you, Dad, you told me I pushed him too far. You have been telling me that since Boyd was 19. Every time he fails, I pushed him. Every time he breaks something, I should have caught it. The garage bay where he stores his tools and his weight bench is $225 a month that I have been paying because you told me the complex offered it for free. The complex does not offer anything for free, Dad. I checked. I have been checking since yesterday, because yesterday taught me that the only thing this family gives for free is blame, and the only thing it charges for is help. Clint's jaw tightened. His hands went deeper into his jacket pockets, the posture of a man being told the architecture of his family's finances by the person who built them, and discovering that the building he lived in had a name on the foundation, and the name was not his. You swung 7 times. I made 3 phone calls. The motorcycle is insured for $12,400, which is more than I paid for it, because the Bonneville appreciated while Boyd's credit score depreciated. Your lease is not insured. Your job is not insured. Your debt plan is not insured. Do the math, Boyd. Boyd stood in the driveway next to the fuel stain. His keys were in his hand. His truck was running behind him. And the driveway that had held a motorcycle yesterday now held the conversation that would end every invisible payment his sister had been making for the last 3 years. This is the last rent supplement. The last debt payment. The last garage bay, the last referral, the last cosign, the last dollar from my account to your life. The motorcycle was built, not bought. Your support structure was the same. And the person who built it just stopped building. I stepped back toward the house. Duff raised his coffee mug from across the street. Not a toast, an acknowledgement. I almost went inside and closed the door. The confrontation was done. The words were said. The driveway had held its second difficult conversation in 2 days. But the sledgehammer stopped me. Not the physical hammer, which was in Clint's truck, but the image of it sitting on my concrete yesterday with fuel dripping next to it, and the knowledge that the tool had been stored in a garage I paid for, and the debt that triggered the swing was being managed by a payment plan I funded, and the job Boyd might lose was a referral I placed. Every weapon he used against me had my fingerprints on the handle. The garage bay was the last fingerprint. I had already submitted the cancellation online last night, but Boyd needed to hear it face to face. One more thing. The garage bay where you keep your tools. $225 a month. My account. My payment. Cancelled. Your tools need to be out by the end of the month, including the sledgehammer. Boyd looked at Clint. Clint looked at the ground where the fuel stain was, the ground that held the scratch from the hammer, the ground that was the only thing in this driveway that had not been paid for by the woman standing 3 feet from it. They got in the truck and left. Duff watched them go. The porch camera recorded the departure the way it recorded everything, with a timestamp and no opinion. The fallout was institutional and financial, and it moved at the speed of paperwork. The police report was processed Friday. A detective contacted Boyd at the Colfax apartment and asked about the motorcycle. Boyd said the damage was accidental. The detective showed him a still frame from Duff's porch camera. Boyd standing with the sledgehammer raised above his head, face visible, motorcycle visible, and the expression on his face was not the expression of a man having an accident. It was the expression of a man aiming. The detective informed Boyd that criminal destruction of property exceeding $5. 00 row in Colorado was a Class 2 misdemeanor, punishable by up to 120 days and a $750 fine, and that the property owner had filed for criminal charges. Boyd asked if his sister would consider dropping them. The detective told him that was between Boyd and the district attorney now. The Harmon distribution meeting happened Friday at 10 a.m. Boyd was placed on administrative leave pending the referral review. His supervisor told him the leave was paid for 2 weeks, after which his position would be filled. 2 weeks of paychecks. Then, nothing. Boyd's last day of guaranteed income was 14 days away, and the apartment required 60 days of rent he could not pay, and the debt required 30 days of minimums he could not cover, and the garage required his tools to be moved to a location he did not have. The insurance claim was processed in 8 business days. Midwest Rider Insurance assessed the 2019 Triumph Bonneville T120 at replacement value $12,400, reflecting model year appreciation and pre-damage condition verified by service records. The check was mailed to Regan. The woman whose brother destroyed a $9,500 motorcycle received $12,400, which meant the sledgehammer had produced a $2,900 profit for the person it was aimed at and a criminal charge for the person who swung it. Boyd's tools were removed from the garage bay on the 28th day of the 30-day notice. Clint helped him load them into the bed of the truck, the weight bench and the socket set and the spare tires and the fiberglass-handled sledgehammer that had started everything. The tools sat in the truck bed under a tarp because Boyd's apartment did not have room for a weight bench and Clint's apartment did not have a garage anymore, because the garage bay required a monthly payment and the payment required a sister, and the sister had stopped writing checks for a family that swung hammers at the person holding the pen. Boyd sat in his apartment on Friday evening with the eviction clock at 46 days and the collections letter on the kitchen counter and the Harmon separation agreement unsigned on the table. The apartment was quiet the way apartments are quiet when the person living in them has just learned that quiet costs money and the money was coming from someone they did not thank. The couch where he sat was in a living room whose rent he could not afford. The lights were on because the electric bill was current, but the bill was current because the deposit had been paid by the same sister who had paid the first month and the last month and the security deposit and every invisible fee that turns a lease from a piece of paper into a place to live. The apartment was not his. It had never been his. It was a room his sister had built around him, and the room was being returned to the landlord in 46 days, and the man sitting inside it was the man who had swung a sledgehammer at the woman who built the walls. Saturday morning. Estes Triumph, Denver. The dealership was on South Broadway, 20 minutes from the house. In a building with glass walls and polished concrete floors, and a row of motorcycles lined up like sentences in a language I spoke fluently. The insurance check was in my jacket pocket. $12,400. More than I had paid for the original bike, because the Bonneville T120 had appreciated 30% in 5 years, while Boyd's credit score had depreciated 40% in the same period. And the difference between appreciation and depreciation is the difference between building something and breaking something, and the insurance company understood that difference even if my family did not. The old key was in my other pocket. Brass, leather tag, built not bought. The key to a machine that no longer existed, but whose tag still carried the philosophy that built it, and the philosophy that would build the next one. I had stamped those letters into the leather 3 years ago at the kitchen table with a $14 letter punch kit from the hardware store, pressing each letter individually into the wet leather, and the pressing had taken 45 minutes, and the drying had taken a full day, and the patience required was the same patience that had saved $9. 500 over 3 years, and the same patience that had sat in a kitchen window, watching 7 swings without yelling. The replacement was a 2024 Triumph Bonneville T120 in competition green. Different color, because the same color would have felt like a restoration, and this was not a restoration. This was a replacement. The old bike was matte black, and the old bike was gone, and the new bike was green, and the new bike was here, and the distance between gone and here was 7 swings and 3 phone calls, and an insurance check that proved the market valued what I built even when my family did not. The salesman ran the paperwork. The insurance check covered the base price with $400 remaining. I paid the upgrade difference from savings, $1,800. The same savings account I had used for the first bike, the account that replenished itself every month, because a woman who earns $84,000 and does not pay her brother's rent or her brother's debt or her father's garage can save $1,800 in 8 weeks without noticing. When the paperwork was done, I unclipped the leather tag from the old key and clipped it onto the new one. Built, not bought. The tag had survived the sledgehammer because it had been in my pocket, not on the bike. The tag had survived Boyd. The tag would survive everything that came after Boyd, because the tag was not attached to a motorcycle. It was attached to a principle, and principles do not dent when hammers swing. Principles dent when the person holding them stops believing in them, and I had not stopped, and the new key in my hand with the old tag on its ring was the proof. I rode the new Bonneville home along the Platte River Trail. The engine sounded the way Triumph engines sound when they are new, clean and tight and full of the controlled urgency that comes from a machine that knows what it is built for and does not apologize for the sound it makes while doing it. The morning was clear. The trail was empty. The Platte River ran alongside the path, flat and silver in the early light. And the 26 minutes between the dealership and my driveway were the first 26 minutes since Tuesday that belonged entirely to me, paid for by me, ridden by me, and owed to no one. I parked the new bike in the same spot in the driveway where the old one had been destroyed. The concrete still had a scratch from the sledgehammer. A thin white line in the sealed surface where the head of the hammer had bounced after the third swing and caught the ground on the follow-through. The scratch would be there for years. It would be there every morning when I walked to the bike, and every evening when I parked it, and every time it rained, and the water pooled in the groove and reminded the driveway of what had happened. The new bike sat on top of the scratch. Competition green over white scar, the way a sentence written today sits on top of a page that was torn yesterday, not hiding the tear but covering it with something that earned its place. The key was in my pocket. Built, not bought. The fuel smell was gone. The driveway was clean except for the scratch. And the woman standing next to a motorcycle she had purchased with insurance money from a motorcycle her brother had destroyed was not angry and was not grieving and was not rebuilding. She had already rebuilt. She was riding. Welcome back to Karma Unfolded. If this story reminded you that the person who builds things can always build again, and that sledgehammers make poor financial instruments, share it tonight. Hit subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me, has anyone ever tried to break what you built? I will see you in the next one.